On behalf of our shared world, all 400 and nearly 50 associates and members now, and the four of us co-chairs, it's an absolute delight to welcome Sarah Hagel and Heather Rowlands from Peacemakers. Um, they are a small charity that's got nearly 40 years' experience dedicated to sharing skills and strategies to grow peace in schools and communities. And it's a really important moment, as many of you are probably aware, because of, and for young people as well, who are also concerned about war. There's Ukraine, there's Gaza, there's politicization of education in the US and other countries, um, and uh, and there are things that some people cannot be taught. Sarah herself has worked as director for Peacemakers for 10 years, seeing the organization grow and adapt to new challenges and needs. She has a background in human rights activism, worked for Amnesty International for 10 years, building membership capacity around the world. She also has a past life in publishing and is very happy to have been part of producing Peacemakers' first published resource, Learning for Peace. Heather turns out to be almost a neighbour of mine here in the Stroud district area. Heather has a lifelong interest in peaceful solutions to conflicts. She has had involvement with Peacemakers for some time, having been appointed by Quakers to serve on the management committee before joining the staff team in the role of program manager. She has worked with primary age children for most of her working life, most recently as assistant head teacher at a school in Birmingham, where she led on behaviour and welfare, helping children feel happy and safe. And the work of Peacemakers, as they say, offers hope and a way to make a difference. So back to you, Holly.
Great. Thanks, Anne. And I'm going to hand rapidly over to Sarah and to Heather. Sarah, sorry that your name was misspelt on that slide there, Sarah without an H. But over to you for your presentation.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. And thank you for inviting us to share a little bit about what we do. So this is Peacemakers. We're educating for peace. So we do peace education. And I'm just going to start by putting that into a bit of context. What do we mean by that? So just to put in context of the Sustainable Development Goal, the bit that applies to us is promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence. And our contribution to that is educating for peace, or learning for peace, as we think adults as well as children are all learning about how we make and build peace. The UK is not coming out brilliantly on this. In 2016, in the UNCRC, the UN Rights of the Child Committee, they concluded that the state, the UK, needs to strengthen its efforts to promote values of peace, tolerance, and non-discrimination in the education system. And we would argue that 10 years later, that is still true. So just to say a little bit about what we're talking about, peace education can be one way of talking about it. There's two aspects: peace education about peace and peace education for peace. Peace education about peace is what people generally know, if they do know anything about peace education. It's often quite knowledge-based, quite head-based. It's about trying to understand conflict. It's peace studies. It's looking at areas of conflict in the world, looking at the roots of conflict, and looking at ways to build peace in that more quite international sense. Peace education for peace, which is what Peacemakers focuses on, is about a lot about skills, about building our skills for everyday local peace. So how are we peaceful in our lives? And help build peaceful schools, peaceful communities, and hopefully contribute to more peaceful society. So it's kind of going back to the beginning, looking at issues like inclusion, equity, tolerance, respect, developing empathy, cooperation, conflict resolution skills, and how to become peacemakers in our own communities first. So it's about developing attitudes and behaviours that support peace and peaceful living. whereas about peace is more causes of violence and conflict. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how can we develop skills for peace. But what kind of peace are we talking about? Again, if you know anything about peace studies, you'll know that Galtung talked about two types of peace, positive peace and negative peace. So we are talking about developing positive peace. So negative peace is the absence of violence or conflict, which is a good thing, but it's only short term. It inevitably opens up to another round of conflict if the roots of the conflict have not been dealt with. Whereas positive peace is the absence of violence, but it's also creating institutions and structures, attitudes and behaviors that create and sustain peace. So that is what we are interested at looking at. And we do it by taking three traditional ways of looking at peace that aren't often applied in things like schools: peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace building. But we think they fit quite well when we look at schools and local building peace locally. So peacekeeping is those rules and safeguards that keep people safe. They are things like in a school, there'd be safeguarding, there'd be the behavior, policies, etc. These things keep people safe, and we do need them. Peacemaking is how we fix things or help put things right when there has been conflict or harm. What ways do we know about making peace after incidents, after behavior incidents, after conflicts, between pupils and staff, and between staff as well? And what are the skills that we can develop that help us be better peacemakers in our local communities? Peace building is the broader set of skills that is much more about strengthening relationships at all levels, looking at things like inequity, things that are at the root of conflict, promoting empathy and respect, and those skills of emotional regulation, emotional intelligence in our children and young people and the adults who work with them. And also getting an understanding of peace as the umbrella, so that there is a positive aim for all of this work, not just the avoidance of conflict, but the building of peace. And we always say you can do too much peacekeeping. Too much peacekeeping leads to authoritarianism. You can never do too much peace building. Over to Heather now, after my quick run through of peace and peace education.
So I am going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that we do. So I'm going to show you some photos of it in action, I suppose. This is one of the schools that we've worked with quite often in Birmingham. These children are doing some drama work around a conflict, and often by doing the drama, you help to get yourself into the situation, and then you can imagine what the other person might be thinking, and working with that, the kind of empathy type things that are needed. As Anne said at the beginning, we've been around for nearly 40 years, and we started our work doing courses with classes, going into a class and working with a class for a period of time. And then we've moved on to we continue to do that, and we also train groups of children to be peer mediators, to work in the playground to solve disputes and find solutions to conflict. And then we've also supported schools to do peace circles within their schools, to have a peace curriculum, to make peace something that they do in their schools. And this involves training the teachers as well as doing some work with the children. We work in both primary schools and secondary schools, although the majority of our work is in primary schools. Most of our work is in circles, and circles are important to us, and we have a variety of different ways of working within the circle, as well as using the circle itself. So this is our toolkit that Anne talked about, that we published. This is the second edition of it, and what it has in it is a whole selection of activities that you can do with children and classes. A lot of the work is through games or through well, the children might not think that they're actually doing very much hard learning, but they really are. So it's a holistic approach. Peace is one thing, but we divide it up into 4 different themes to help us to grapple with it in different ways. So we've got the four themes that include thinking with our heads and thinking with our hearts and thinking with our hands. Peace within covers well-being, positive mental health, rooted in self-esteem, supports belonging, helps with navigation of emotions, helps you to have conversations about emotions that are often called difficult emotions, so that when those difficult emotions come upon you, you have a toolkit of things that you can do to help yourself with it. For us, peace between is that relationship building. It's about cooperation. It's about understanding of conflict. Peace among is about building the community. It's about cohesion. It's about inclusion. It's about rights and responsibilities. And then peace in the world is taking those skills and going out into the corner of the world that you're in and making that a more peaceful place. You do it through exploring bias, through exploring stereotypes, and making a difference in your space. We are firm believers in how peace education is taught is really, really important. The pedagogy of peace it's participative. It's about building relationships, and that through building the relationships and taking time and energy on building relationships, it is much easier to maintain and repair relationships when they are tested. Almost all of our facilitation is in a circle, and circles are really important to us. Working in a circle, everybody can see each other, everybody's got their own space, everybody's can participate on an equal footing. We use a talking piece in our circles. We use a couche ball, which is this fluffy thing that this boy's got in his hand. And that talking piece gives structure to the sharing. It gives an expectation that everyone's contribution will be valued, and it shares the power within the circle so that the children decide who we're hearing from and who's next and what they might, how the conversation might be developed, and that sharing of the power equalizes, creates a bit of equity within the circle. And after an activity or a game, we will always spend time reflecting, processing, reviewing, and that's where all of the learning happens. That's the important part of the getting the nub of what the point of doing whatever it is has happened. So that's we spend a lot of time on that, and often when we're training with teachers and with they're surprised at how long we take on that, but actually once they've got into the flow of it, it's they understand why it's important and actually naturally do it themselves. I think that might be the end of what we had wanted to say to you, so I'm going to hand back to Sara.
Sorry, yes, just this is our provocation for you. How can peace education help us to learn to live with difference in an increasingly polarized world? So we've taken polarization as the main issue rather than war, as we think that it kind of is more immediate, perhaps, in our societies. But you might want to go off into, is peace education important, or why? But this is the provocation to get you started.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Heather and Sara. An incredibly efficient presentation and full of really interesting things to get us thinking. I'm going to send us into breakout rooms now. We'll have 5 minutes just to discuss in small groups, how can peace education help us learn to live with difference in an increasingly polarized world? And then we'll see you all on the other side. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to have a bit of time now just to feedback. So back over to you, Heather and Sara.
Yes, thank you. I mean, we've got about 4 minutes, so but I'd love to hear. So if anybody would like to put anything in the chat that they, particularly if you think for us, oh, it'd be good if they knew about something or have they thought about this? That would be lovely for us to hear. But maybe if we could have a minute or so from each group. I believe there was Anne's group. Is somebody from Anne's group willing to say something?
Julie was talking about virtues, which I thought was interesting. And Aisling was talking about how she's very familiar with your work, but has realized now she's doing quite a bit on the about and maybe needs to shift to the for. But Julie's work on virtues sounded really interesting.
Yeah, virtues education and character education are quite close, I think, related. And Aisling would be very happy to have conversations with you. Obviously, we know Aisling from the Peace Education Network. There was a group with Kathy. Is anybody from Kathy's group able to speak?
Nicole, I wonder if I can I bounce that one to you?
Yeah, sure. No, we were talking about how intrigued we were in the idea of the different dimensions of peace and presenting that as a way of working with children and young people. But so it's moving beyond the kind of behavioral model that maybe you get in schools and thinking about, kind of being part of a community and being involved in building positive peace rather than just not misbehaving, if you see what I mean. So we were sort of struck by that and how useful that might be in lots of school contexts.
Yeah, so important to us that we're not the behavioral model. It's not kind of rewards and sanctions. We didn't talk about it, we promote restorative ethos in schools. And we do think that the way of working could apply to other types of education that come under SDC. It's like, how are we responding when people disagree, for example, with what we're saying? How do we allow for that? Be interesting.
And we were noticing lots of parallels because all three of us happen to be doing a lot of work around sustainability. That kind of, inspiring positive action was really running in parallel with a lot of what we were thinking as well in terms of our areas of work.
And
maybe I could just jump in there. We talked as well about the in Seed with the Young Changemakers program. We've had to bring in a module on having difficult conversations because what happened was that these young people were having difficult conversations, and there were conflicts between different viewpoints that people were holding. And we've used quite a lot of the psychology around misinformation and disinformation. And what we loved was your because there's research now that says that doing simulations and gaming is one of the most effective ways to deal with misinformation and disinformation. So
yeah, that would be wonderful to be able to afford to create something like that around peace education, but beyond our pocket. But yeah, very much agree. Yes, Julie, sorry.
For the peer mediators, because I've done that in schools before, do your schools feel that they're able to get their midday supervisors trained? Because we found that was very useful when we got that done, just because that's where a lot of conflict happens, is in the unstructured time.
Yeah, we insist on that bit.
Yeah,
we only do peer. We prefer to do all of the staff, but definitely the lunchtime supervisors, because they have to trust it, don't they?
Yeah,
and understand it. Yeah. And there was one more group with I know it had Lisa in it. I don't know who else. If there's anybody who wanted to say a quick, and I think don't have to, but
I think I was in that group. We were just wondering, I was saying that in primary schools, I don't see so much the problem. I was with UNICEF and when the Rights Respecting School program, and the school that I was in week before last, I did an assembly on peace, and everyone was wonderful. The children, it was in the middle of a rough estate in Hackney, but the school is a haven. We were wondering, when does that change? At what stage does peace not happening within schools and people not getting together? I mean, they live in silos, but within the school, they are pretty much united. Here, I don't know if that's true, but where does that change?
We're keen for our work not to be seen as a solution to an existing problem, but more building blocks for the future we're trying to create. So people might naturally be getting on. It's not necessarily, oh, we're bringing it in. So we have that issue with a lot of suburban schools, for example. They say, we don't need it. Maybe they need it in those kinds of places. Whereas our argument that these are building blocks, like you learn the building blocks of maths and English, you learn the building blocks of building peace, so that when you are facing these situations, as everyone does, then you have resources and a toolkit and experience to draw on. And every school will have conflicts, you know, that football, you know, not enough pens, you know, there's always conflict, there's always blame flying around. One of the big things we do is teach people about blame and the rather negative impact blame has and how we're all using it. I was doing a session in schools yesterday just on it, when the teacher's going, God, I do that all the time. I didn't realize that that was adding to exacerbating situations. So there's a lot of basic tools that people just need to spend time on, and great if they're getting on and they're doing, because that is how you can learn well, when you're in that capacity. But you need it in the life you're going to lead. We don't say you don't need maths because you're not doing mathematical problems when you're 9.
Oh, I do say that.
Well, that one I'd agree with you more. But you know, there you go. It's a different issue.
I do too, and I'm an ex-maths teacher, so hey.
Me too.
Well, there we are.
But for us, it is also like, I think that somebody mentioned, how do you be with, we talk about being with difference, but how are we when it's difference we really don't like? You know, when it's people who don't want refugees, or whose parents don't want refugees in, or, you know, how are we modeling being with that kind of difference? You know, or are we going back to, you know, a lot of people who are in favor of social justice, the way we present it can be quite adversarial to people who don't have the viewpoints we have. So how do we bring peace in? How do we make and build peace even then?
Such a poignant question to end on there, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you to everyone that contributed. I know we always want to be able to, we only scratch the surface here with these learning lunches, these really speedy half hours. But we do say that if you do want to carry on these conversations, please do reach out to Heather, to Sarah, to any of us at Our Shared World, and stay in touch, because these conversations are so important. I just want to say another big thank you to Heather and Sarah for presenting today, and share an invitation to our next learning lunch, which is taking place on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. It's our last one of the year, and we'll be celebrating Global Education Week. So Global Education Week takes place this year on the 17th to the 23rd of November. It's organised by the Council of Europe's North-South Centre Global Education Network, which I'm one of the UK representatives for. So I'll be sharing a learning lunch about the idea of hope in action, which is the theme for this year's Global Education Week, and looking at what it means to have collective hope in action. You are also all invited to contribute to a photo exhibition that Our Shared World are hosting as part of Global Education Week. And again, the theme for that photo exhibition is Hope in Action. I've shared an invitation in the chat, and we'll share one in any follow-up emails as well. But thank you all so much for spending this lunchtime with us. We hope you have a really lovely rest of your day. And
Can I just say one thing before we go?
Yes, go for it, Anne.
That was fantastic, Sarah and Heather. And, you know, for anyone who's ever wondered why all of those adjectival educations are lumped together in SDG 4.7, I think we found out today how much we have in common. So it was fantastic to hear. Thank you so much.
It's very much a pleasure.
Yes, lovely to be here. Thank you.